Hi, Eric here, back at the Gerald Smith Vineyard, and we've been busy. There's a lot of work going on in all the vineyards this time of year. So what happens is in this early spring, mid-spring, the little grape flowers bloom, and right after that occurs, the vines go into what we call a rapid growth phase. So for about 7 weeks, they grow like mad, and we have to try and keep up with them. So we have to take all the suckers off the trunks where we don't want them. We have to tuck the canes into the trellis, and we have to hedge the long parts so that they don't get too long and that we can stimulate the vine to grow where we want it to grow. And we have to do a lot of mowing because the cover crop's in a rapid growth phase 2, and then we do it all over again, and we have to keep doing that until the vines kind of slow down. They do pause after about 50 days, and then they go into a ripening phase where the grapes will start to plump up and ripen and get ready for the harvest. And so we go from making a vineyard and a grape row that looks like this to something that looks a little more like this. So this one has all been suckered and tucked and hedged, and we'll finish here and move on to the next vineyard. We just keep moving around until we get to that lag phase. Now this vineyard's almost done, but you do run into your occasional surprises like this one. So we have a rather impressive hornet's nest in row 9, so we'll have to deal with this and come back and finish rows 8 and 9 a little later. All right, enough talk about work. Let's talk about something a little more interesting, and it's the high stakes and long-term view of growing grapes. So look at this cane here. So what's this? This is called a pencil. We used to use this for writing, but now I just use it for pointing at stuff. And now we just keyboard all the time anyway, or tablet or whatever it is. Anyway, if you look at this cane, this whole cane structure was contained in a bud that was formed last year. So at the beginning of the spring, it just had the canes on the wire and all the individual buds, and this whole structure was pretty much already formed inside that bud. So when it popped out, you could see the tiny cane and the tiny leaves and the bunches, and it was all there, just very, very small. So what that means is that was all formed last year. And so what's happening now is you have a bud here, there's a bud on the back here, and then there's another bud here, and that's where all of next year's crop is being formed right now. And in fact, a study just came out this year that said 50% of next year's crop is pretty much determined by the temperature where these buds were developing when these little grape flowers bloomed and the grapes started to form. So a lot of what happens next year is already baked in the cake. So if you had any problems, so if you had a nutrition problem with your vines, temperature, frost, freeze, whatever, and it damaged these primordial buds that were already formed inside that cane waiting to bust out, then you're going to have a problem next year. And any problems you have next year could affect the year after. So everything we're experiencing this year was already determined last year, and we're just trying to keep it. So everything we're doing this year is trying to keep this crop that was already kind of decided last year, and then everything we do this year is going to help us start a good crop next year. So this is something I didn't really understand a lot when I started growing grapes, because I was working for Tim Frania up in his vineyard, and he was always very, very tense all the time, and all year long he's just very twitchy, and he really didn't relax until that last bunch of grapes was picked and in the box, and then you can see relief. But then it starts again. It starts again, you know, a couple months later when you have to start the next season. So there is some relief. But in case you're wondering why grape growers seem to be very tense most of the time, well, this is why. You know, they do lighten up from time to time, but there's a lot going on all year long, and the stakes are pretty high. So mistakes you made last year affect next year. The mistakes you make this year affect next year and the year after, and that's just kind of the way it goes. So anyway, that's kind of where we're at this point in the growing season. It looks pretty decent so far. It was very warm and dry during the bloom, and that helped the fruit form this year. It helped all those little flowers form grapes, so we had a very good fruit set. And as we talked about, because it was warm, these little buds will be forming lots of nice flowers for fruit for next year. And now all we have to worry about is, you know, the birds and the hailstorms and other things for this year to try and get this crop in. And we have to worry about the freezes and the frosts and everything else for next year's crop. So it does focus the mind when you only have one payday a year, and the mistakes you make will affect the next 2 or 3 paydays. So in case you're wondering why everybody's a little on edge, you know, when you see somebody working in the vineyard, you know, be a little understanding. You know, they got a lot going on in their minds, and but you know, we'll talk to you, but you know, we've got work to do right now. We'll relax in November, let's say. Anyway, till next time, you know, adios.